Fear not, citizens. Hope has arrived.
Because I am here. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, and welcome to the pod where we chat, argue, wax poetic about the movies that we love, hate, or that are simply worth talking about. Movies have always something to say, and we love trying to analyze what they capture. Welcome to the Shatter After as we begin to celebrate the summer of Superman. I am Brandon Alvarado, one of your hosts, and I am here with the Shatter After Unlimited crew, Cliff and Mike. What is up, guys?
You said unlimited, and the Justice League theme just started playing in my head. The da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da. And you know who opens that intro, right? It's just Superman staring you straight in the face.
Yes.
So I'm here. I'm happy. I'm excited to talk about Superman. Top 3 favorite characters of all time. So this is gonna be fun.
Cliff, you're excited to talk Soups?
Man, I'm so excited to talk about this man. My favorite nerdy, goofy, just beautiful man. I can't wait to get into this. It's gonna be a fun time. We're about to go through childhood, everything.
Oh, we're gonna do the whole thing, and we're excited to celebrate the summer of Superman with 3 awesome episodes that will happen throughout June and when the movie comes out. Because as you guys know, on July 11th, Superman is coming to theaters. We're going to talk about Superman. And on this episode, we are starting with a special edition of Film Sessions for the Shatter After, where we're going to be exploring Superman on film. And what we're going to be arguing and discussing is Superman in theaters, silver screen. So we're going to talk about Christopher Reeve. We're going to talk about Brandon Routh's take. We're going to talk about Henry Cavill. And we're going to talk about our hopes and dreams that lie on the shoulders of David Corenswet. We're going to talk about what worked, what didn't, and also share our thoughts and our disappointments and things that we enjoyed throughout our lives as we have tried and seeked to enjoy Superman on film. So guys, let's get into it. And to start off, we have to talk about the one that started it all in the sense of the new era of Superman films. And we got to talk about Christopher Reeve. What a phenomenal actor and what a phenomenal portrayal of Clark Kent / Superman. I still go back as I was getting ready for this coverage. I remember the poster. Of course, I wasn't alive back then, but I've had great encounters with this film. Some of my most beloved watchings with my cousin Mario. I still remember the poster, "You'll Believe a Man Can Fly." And for the time, this movie really made us believe. Not just because of the effects of the time, but how Christopher Reeve carried that character. It is just so iconic. And when you guys saw those films for the first time, I don't know if you guys have seen all 4 or have you seen at least the first 2, because some people think that quadrology of movies is actually just a duology. But what are your thoughts on the Christopher Reeve era of Superman?
Christopher Reeve era Superman. This is so interesting for me because this is one of the last iterations of the character I was exposed to growing up as a kid. My mom was a massive retro TV fan, so I watched George Reeves TV shows like Black and White
when you were a kid.
When I was a kid, and I'm watching the Fleischer shorts, and then I watched Superman the animated series and Justice League. So this movie was not my first introduction to Superman. Being the film nerd that I am, right, watching this at 10 years old, and I've already seen Justice League Unlimited a million times. I still had that appreciation because on the cover of the VHS tape, it says, "You'll Believe a Man Can Fly." And this is the first live action Superman that I've ever seen. And that is still very special, right? I did see a man fly for the first time with this movie. And I think just the appreciation and reverence that people have for it to this day, right? Influencing movies like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, which is something I did grow up with, or Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman, right? It's so interesting how much of the spirit carries on and how much Christopher Reeve embodied that era, that golden age interpretation of Superman. And so, yeah, I don't think I love this movie as much as people who watched this when they were like 5 years old, coming into it late. But I still can appreciate this like moment in film history and how important Christopher Reeve was to this character, because he just embodies Superman. He embodies the kindness, the heart, the humility, right? He's also one of the few actors who can properly do the switch from Clark Kent to Superman in an instant.
Oh, this is probably my favorite Superman movie. It's the one I grew up with. I was talking to Brandon earlier on screen. Mike, you might have missed this part, but I had mentioned that I had this and Quest for Peace on VHS tape as a kid.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's very weird. That's why when Sentry pops up in Thunderbolts, all I see is Nuclear Man, because I'm just like, I've seen this before. Like, this is adorable. I love this and whatnot.
I've seen this movie.
Exactly. But yeah, so this has a very special place in my heart that literally I watched this for the first time in years. February of last year. Because I don't know if y'all remember where I was doing like my like quick live action Superman deep dive or whatever. It was actually in preparation for this upcoming movie. And yeah, it's just so many things I love about this. It does everything I love about movie making and just like comic book adaptations, especially within the context of where Superman exists, like in comics at the time. This is before John Byrne did the reboot where, we actually focus on Clark Kent more so than just Superman. So it exists in a very specific like time frame in history for me. But I love Christopher Reeve in this. I love his switch between Clark Kent and Superman. I love how the movie just starts with like a 10-minute intro with Jonathan Williams' musical score. That thing that most movies don't do anymore. Batman '89 and like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man is the last one that gives us these beautiful just musical themes that set the tone for the movie and lets it transports you into another world. The same thing that the James Bond movies do and all that stuff. But yeah, it's a classic movie, underdog story. It has so many fantastical elements that I just really love about it, and great costume, fun special effects, and just I love it. It's 4-star movie for me.
This movie, and I think it's we're gonna start digging into it and breaking apart what of Superman really stands out positively and what of Superman doesn't work. But there's no one of the things that I think that stands out to me of the Reeve era of Superman is that Superman is fun. He is a character that we want to be around. You know what I mean? Like, it is a welcoming presence to anyone that's saved by him and everyone that sees him. And I think that is such a very important quality in the character of Superman, because one of the things that stands out in most comic books, at least when it comes towards Superman's interaction with the world and the people at large, is that the people of the world love and respect Superman. You know what I mean? Like most of the antagonistic forces against Superman it's like governments, corporations, people that only think of themselves, but like the public as a whole embrace the character, embrace him as a hero and what he represents for the most part. And I love how Christopher Reeve Superman is fun. Welcome, like when you watch him, you just smile. Like it produces that sense of a friend, like he would describe him in interviews. Like it has that effect on those that see him. And I think that's what stands out the most in this era of Superman is that the problem with these films is not the interpretation of the character. It's not the interpretation of Clark Kent. It's not the interpretation of Superman. I would say it's the world that he's surrounded by, because it is a world that's really more into this vaudeville-esque classic comedy radio feel world that's really not influenced by the comic book lore. It's not really influenced by the comic book world that Superman really belongs to. Like if it, with the very big exception of Superman 2, But then again, the Zod that we see in Superman 2 is not comic book Zod. It is a creation for the films that then influences comic book Zod into what Zod is now in the comics.
Yeah.
Do you guys agree or disagree with that observation? Because I think Superman is perfect, but the world that surrounds him is what prevents it from being a complete, full-lived Superman world.
I would say Superman's been a character that's been around for almost 100 years. And so Superman the movie's interpretation of Metropolis, right? We can say now it doesn't reflect what comic book Metropolis is, but when in his first appearance, right, where he's faster than a speeding bullet, leaping tall buildings in single bounds, he's not fighting these super villains. He's fighting like bank robbers. He's fighting wife beaters. Like Superman was a man of the people. I think that's what made him so endearing, is that he was helping be a superhuman in everyday situations, right? And so he's stopping petty crimes. In his first appearance, he's essentially doing what Batman does in his like first 20 issues of comics. He's not fighting kaiju or billionaires or anything until a little bit later on. And so I think this first movie specifically is kind of doing that, because Lex, his entire plan in that first film is like real estate. And it's like he's just a crappy, like evil businessman, but not like super genius making robots that we know today. But it's like, dude, you're doing a really bad thing and you're going to destroy California in the process because of your evil machinations. I've got to stop you. And so I think for the era that it's echoing, like first 2 years of Superman, right? Like in the 40s, I think it does a good job. However, this is a movie that came out in 1978, and it doesn't reflect the Superman of 1978. Exactly. So as like an homage to the past, I think it works. But yeah, it wasn't reflecting the modern era at the time, nor what the character would become later on.
So would you say that what works to its detriment is the fact that it's funny, even though it's the first iteration of the character in live action, it is still living in the bubble of decades past, as opposed to trying to be present with the literature at the time?
I mean, yeah, because at the time people didn't take comic books seriously, right? So like Donner and the writers on that film are very much like, well, this is what I remember Superman as a kid. And that's the feeling that you get of the Superman they felt as a child is what's present on screen, not necessarily what's reflective of the comics, and it's kind of, not to jump ahead, but it's kind of what's happening now, right? Where it's like the James Gunn Superman feels like the Superman he grew up with. The Superman of today has like 3 kids and a wife, you know? And so it's not really reflective. We're always like echoing back to, this is how I remember the character. And I think that's kind of what happened here, where they know the planet blows up. They know he ends up on Earth. We'll make it up as we go, because that's what the original comics did. But once the lore was established, I don't think they really knew that was happening in 1977 when they were writing that script.
I don't know, because I don't necessarily have an argument against what either of you say. I think, because in fact, I think I agree. Because as we all know, that's kind of just the nature of filmmaking. No one really thinks about, what impact this will have on the future, interpretations of this character. Because to me, I think we can probably all agree that this version of Superman is very fantastical. It's more so a fantasy movie as opposed to like sci-fi almost. Like I get it, we have another planet, we have these elements of sci-fi, but it's not presented in this way or in that way specifically. Krypton is this overly bright planet where they have a system of everyone wears the same clothing. Their light bill has to be extremely high at this point, in the franchise, where it seems like they come from a people who have ascended, the everyday difficulties of Earthlings, of humans, So when Clark comes in, he kind of just he feels like another being, but he's still fantastic. He's still fantastical to some nature, So I guess I would have to watch the Fleischer animated clips of. Again, I haven't seen those in years, so it's been a long time since I've watched those movies. But yeah, this it feels more so like, hey, we're making a fantasy movie instead of making, the kaiju fighting, the guy who interacts with the new gods, the guy who teams up with Batman type of character that most of us know. This is dude comes to Earth. He's raised by parents, and he's given morals and ethical values that this is a movie where he's walking in his purpose, if you will. And he's just helping people fight everyday problems, essentially, which in the 70s, you can argue could have been accurate. Obviously we had a lot of turmoil and different things going on, but I think within the 70s, it kind of fits for me. I think if what I'm saying makes sense.
Oh yeah, it definitely makes sense. I just want to highlight this is the same like time period where the Super Friends and stuff is happening as well. That's all I mean. It's like he's teaming up with Batman and Wonder Woman already in this era, and this movie is like, yeah, we're not doing that. We're going back.
Well, I will put it this way:
a little bit.
Most of the time, movies are also late to the game in terms of interpretations as well. It's like it's a funny dichotomy. Like they influence, but they also are so far behind the curve in terms of what this character's already done in other mediums, if that makes sense.
They still got the character right.
Yeah, in spite of all of that.
And that's the biggest thing, right? The character is right. I think it's because we are so removed of the era that it belongs to. In retrospect, I think we all have the tendency, I'm guilty of wanting to insert what we know to be the literature. And I think it goes back to what you were saying, Mike. It's that at the moment, there wasn't really that much steam in terms to the literature that was available. It all came back to what they knew of the character and what worked for them and for that character, what reminds them. It's a very personal take on the character, and I think I think I'm so surprised that the interpretation of the character still stands the test of time. But the interpretation of the other elements are what I would say are questionable to me. Like I don't really I don't really know what the Lex Luthor of those times was like, and if the Hackman version is anywhere close to it. It
kind of.
There is something there.
Yeah, I mean, Lex obviously becomes genius level intellect as time goes on, but yeah, he really was just fat bald guy that Superman had beef with. Like one of the first appearances, like Superman made him lose his hair, and that's why he has a grudge against Superman. It's like, okay.
So in other words, this is Lex Luthor. Like for the first couple of issues.
I mean, honestly, when you think about how people probably perceived Lex Luthor at the time, Gene Hackman was probably the best interpretation people saw before. And that's my point of like remembering the era that we're in when we're talking about this.
How do we feel? Because I noticed a lot of people also, I've noticed a lot of podcasts, they don't talk about this, whether or not it has any significance, but in terms of like director's influence on this as well. Because looking at Richard Donner's like IMDb credits, the movie he directed before this was The Omen, which, is one of the most like impressive and, influential horror mystery thriller. I haven't actually seen it, but I know it has impacted films to come in the future, right? And afterwards he did like The Goonies and did Lethal Weapon, which are three drastically different movies. How do y'all feel that Richard Donner's influence was on this character? Because Brandon, you mentioned it arguably is probably the most definitive version of Superman. That most people, I'm sure, I don't know, maybe how younger generations feel. They're probably more akin to Man of Steel, probably. I don't know, and whatnot. But like, do y'all think Richard Donner's, stylistic artistry is like smack dab, like also responsible for this take on Superman?
Mario has a great episode on his podcast, Superman on Film. You guys should check it out, where he talks about how Superman, the movie, is like a blueprint, and talks about how that movie came to be. It's a very interesting story, and I think it talks about how that story was rewritten and like the genesis of it and stuff like that. Like the guy that wrote The Godfather did the script. Like it's there's a lot.
That's another thing to take, like, again, knowing how Hollywood worked at the time. The guy who wrote The Godfather wrote the script of this, but also like Gene Hackman wanted to be in this movie because he loved Superman. And it's like we're still in the era of the movie star, right? I know we've talked about how like that's kind of gone away in modern times, but very famous people
Say
wanted to
that
be
to Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning.
Tom Cruise is the last one. This is a big deal, man. No, but like the fact that very famous people wanted to be a part of this project and they came in, but that also influences the character, right? Because we need to let Gene Hackman shine. So we're not going to just have him be like stoic Lex Luthor who just kind of sits there and broods and gets mad about Superman, right? We have to have him
Tessmacher.
Right, you want him animated, you want him hamming it up because you want to showcase this incredible talent we've landed, but also this unknown actor that people don't know has to be a believable Superman. And I think Donner and company were genius casting Christopher Reeve in this role because they could have gone with a known face, a known name, right? But they're like, we want to have somebody who can just become the character, and you just see Superman.
Yeah.
And that's an impressive feat. And Christopher Reeve, man, like he is just so freaking good, almost too good. And one of the faults of this film is that he's too good. And years to come, no one could live up to it. And that's something that we're going to talk about later. But it's like he was too good in this role.
Yes.
And I'd argue that's why so many people found Superman boring. It's kind of this weird antithesis, right? Of like he was so good at becoming this godlike figure, right?
It became a niche. Like he became the cast, and whenever you try to put anything within that cast, if it wasn't perfect just like that, it just wouldn't work.
Not just that, but the way that he plays the character is why people think Superman is that way. Because it's like, has he done anything wrong in these films? Like, has Clark Kent made a mistake? A massive mistake in these movies, right? Like, I don't think he has. I don't think there's ever a moment where I'm like, oh, you messed up here, Clark. You messed up here, Superman. And I think that's why people have this bad conception of Superman as boring because he's perfect. And I don't even think the movies were even trying to say that he was perfect, but this man was just so charismatic. And since we didn't give him glaring faults, people perceived him as perfect for like 50 years.
I think when you were talking about the casting, I think you answered Cliff's question. Like, yes, definitively, the vision of the director, the vision of the people in charge is what drove to the casting of Christopher Reeve, and give us this amazing interpretation of the character.
Yeah, that's great, because I was going to say, like, in comparison to Batman 89, it influenced it, but I don't think it changed the full trajectory. I don't know, like, I feel like Batman animated series probably did a lot more work for Batman in the long run than 89 did, arguably.
For the general populace, but for film lovers, Batman 89 is testament. You know what I mean?
Trust me. We can spend another 2 hours on Batman. When Batman 2 comes out, we'll do this again.
Yes, we'll just go back. We'll do another film session. But yes, Christopher Reeve, what a great place to start. I think I still I'm guilty of trying to find. I would love to see a modern take of the character with that level of heart, because the right lessons are there to be learned for new creatives, right? Because undoubtedly the one thing they got right was the character. They got Superman right, which I think it's why those movies till today, when you watch them, you cannot deny that it is Superman. As we move on Superman on film, we definitely have to talk about the safe Superman. And I want to call him the safe Superman because it learned. I think this is the perfect example of what you were saying, Mike. The Christopher Reeve impossible perfection of interpretation, because when you get to Brandon Routh's take on the character, when you get to the Brandon Routh Superman Returns, I consider him the safe Superman because they were just trying to replicate the magic of Reeve's portrayal. And I think this is where we start seeing a downturn, because I'm going to be honest, I truly enjoy Superman Returns. In a bubble, like, I love that movie. Like, I love the set pieces. I enjoy Brandon Routh the character. I have issues with a lot of things, but I'm not here to tell you that it's a horrible Superman film. I just think that it wasn't the Superman film that we needed at that point in time. And it wasn't and it learned the wrong lessons from the original version that we got with Reeve. Because not only do we have an actor that is technically being forced to mimic to a degree, to the point that they're giving him the same lines as Reeves' portrayal, where he has to literally say certain lines verbatim like Reeves, just in different scenarios. You can kind of sense that Routh really is struggling to find his voice within the character, which is why, for me, I'm actually very happy that we got to see Routh reprise Superman in the Crisis of Infinite Earths event in the Arrowverse, because that is the first time that I see Routh in the Superman suit and be like, okay, that's Brandon Routh Superman. Like, I was able to distinctly see him make it his own, but he was not able to achieve that in this movie because he's trying to emulate the Reeve interpretation, but then also all the other characters are kind of built trying to emulate their versions from ages ago, and that's where it falls apart, because not only are we trying to emulate something that was emulating something from the 30s and 40s, we're failing at emulating what was presented in the 70s in that original series of movies. And I think that just did harm to the character on film. So it was too safe and too risky in certain things, and that's why I think this movie suffered and wasn't the best representation for our character.
I don't disagree with you there. I feel like this film struggles for a lot of things. Going back to what we were talking about with Donner, right? Of the director and their influence on the movie. I'm just gonna say it. Bryan Singer doesn't like comic books, and that's part of the problem. You see his X-Men movies, and it's like,
what do you think we were wearing? Yellow spandex? Yes,
right?
you're wearing yellow
You don't like
spandex.
Days of
Thank you,
Future
Matthew
Past?
Vaughn. Thank you, Matthew Vaughn, for the yellow spandex, by the way.
I know Kevin Feige, because Kevin Feige was a producer on those. I know he was so mad. He was going to his house mad that day. Like, man, I can't wait till I get the X-Men. I'm gonna put Hugh Jackman in that outfit. No, but
Well, the first
Bryan
time he
Singer,
grabbed Hugh Jackman, he gave him the outfit, even though it wasn't a
seriously.
Detto movie.
No, not to get sidetracked, but I just wanted everybody to know the story that Bryan Singer banned comic books on the X-Men set, and Kevin Feige was smuggling them into Hugh Jackman and Halle Berry. I just have to tell that story. That is so funny to me.
Thank you, Kevin Feige.
Comic smuggling is crazy.
I know, right? But
There's got to
Bri-
be a cartoon of Feige just carrying the boxes like
seriously. But no, Bryan Singer notoriously doesn't like comic books, and so the fact that he's directed two of the biggest comics like projects of all time blows my mind. So I think that's why that was his in, though, right? It's like, hey, I don't have to figure out how to bring this to life. I'm just going to pull in this original franchise of movies, right? And again, I was 6 years old when this movie came out, so I don't have a great like knowledge on what it was culturally, but I do know Christopher Reeve passed away like 2 years before this movie came out. And I don't know if they were like, oh, we're going to honor him by harkening back to those movies instead of just full on rebooting. But I do know that it gives this movie an identity crisis. Yes, I used the word crisis because this is DC. Yeah, you guys picked up on that. But it gives him an identity crisis because Brandon Routh is good, but like he's trying to be someone he's not, right? And it's like he's trying to be Christopher Reeve. And it's so strange to me because we don't have Michael Keaton. We keep going to Batman. We don't have Michael Keaton being Adam West. You know, like you need to craft your own identity for the era that you're in, especially with movies like
True.
Spider-Man. Spider-Man came out, X2, directed by Bryan Singer, came out, and those were phenomenal films. And
Yep.
this one was stuck in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where one of the nostalgia things starts to creep up on you, where it's like, people were mad at the choices that this movie made, not because of the movie itself, but because of what it did to the Donner film's legacy. Like the relationship between Lois and Clark feels weird, but it feels even worse because it's like, how would you do that to Margot Kidder and Christopher Reeve? Retroactively ruining someone's childhood is why I think so many people were like hateful against this film, even though at the end of the day it's just kind of a mediocre movie. Like it's not terrible, but it's just kind of boring. But ultimately that identity crisis is why it's going to be like the one lost to time and forgotten, unfortunately, because Brandon Routh is amazing. And I'm glad, like you said, I'm glad he got to come back. I'm glad he got a new suit and he has his own character that will exist, you know, in our memories, but it's unfortunate.
I remember seeing this movie for the first time. I had no idea that it was a reference to Reeve's Superman from before. I just saw Superman. I was like, oh, cool. I'll go see this movie. You know,
that's how most people probably watched it. And I think that's also part of the problem.
Right. And
then they find out, wait a minute, this is like Donner, same thing, Superman 2, what? Like,
I think I watched this movie at like 11 years old. And the only reason I knew what was happening because my dad was like, I think this is a sequel, because he just remembered because he saw the movies when they came out. And so he's like, okay, we have to go back and rewatch these just so y'all can understand. And I'm like, this wasn't worth it. Half those movies sucked too, man. The Avengers were coming out at that time. I was young. I was stupid. Don't mind me.
And the sad thing is, it's also like a sequel that's out of time. You know, it's a drastic tonal shift from the previous 4 movies. It's visually a lot darker. Like the cinematography of it just feels more angry and desperate and like sad. You tell me Superman has been gone for 10 years at this point, and like you don't really explain why he disappeared as well, and then you bring it back and it's just like, oh, it's also like sandwiched in, as Mike mentioned, you know, Spider-Man had just come out, Spider-Man 2 was out, Batman Begins came out,
Spider-Man 2, and Spider-Man 2, it's like that's like the end all be all of that trilogy
of that era, right?
Yeah,
you know, we've had Ang Lee's Incredible Hulk before this, and then 2 years after this, you get Iron Man. It's just like, why would you ever do this to a character? You know, and don't get me wrong, I love Kingdom Come Superman. It's my favorite Superman costume, and I appreciate that we get some kind of payoff for Brandon Routh's version in the Arrowverse. But looking back and where this movie fits and where it took place, is just like, I'm under the impression that even Warner Brothers didn't even know what to do with this character back then.
I'd argue that they never have known what to do with this character since 1978.
Well, think about this also. If I believe this movie was actually the result of several failed attempts to bring the character back. Like there were almost like 4 different. Right? There was like several different attempts. Cavill being part of one, it never came to fruition. So this not only had the economic baggage of all those failed attempts, it also had the baggage that was self-acclaiming by trying to carry a legacy that wasn't meant to be theirs to begin with. And yeah, it's hard to watch, and it's funny that you make that point, Cliff, where you mentioned that it's sad. And it's true, it's a sad, heartbreaking film, but not what you want, kind of, because when you think about Superman, what do we say that we enjoyed? It put a smile in our faces. Like there was a fun element of being able to see our hero succeed. And not only that, like the payoff of him not being alone anymore because he understands that he has a son, you know, that he's able to now pass down. Like the idea that this was going to be a plot device to be explored, that to me is exciting, but you did not set it up in a movie that's worth enjoying and remembering for you to be able to then pay that off. Because it's used as a flair for the film, not a turning point to really, like, it wasn't used to the proper effect.
It also makes you question, why should I care? Like, I haven't seen Superman on screen most of my life. Like, he was on VHS for the majority of my life. So why do you want me to then go pay money, or have my parents go pay money to see old Superman, essentially. You know, like,
So
it feels like I should have been watching the death of Superman. That's how like sad this movie felt for
Cliff
me.
is spitting.
You know,
yeah, it's one of those things where you're totally right. It's Superman is a character for all ages, but like, and I'm glad that we are starting to realize that comic books are for children. We can love them, don't get me wrong, but they are predominantly for kids. What was this movie? You know, because it's like it's a sequel to a movie that came out. What was when did Quest for Peace come out? In like what, 83? 85, something like that?
No, but it's even worse. Remember, it's not a sequel to Quest for Peace. It's a sequel to Richard Donner's Superman 2.
Yeah, I get that's even weirder.
No, but I know.
Point being,
Yeah,
the last of the Reeves
1987.
films, 87. So we're 20 years removed. We're 20 years removed from that, and it's like no kid is gonna get it. Don't get me wrong. I'll bring it for the next episode. I have like a 3-foot statue of Brandon Routh Superman at my parents' house. I'll make sure I bring it so you guys can see it for proof. But like, it just being Superman was
he's trying to buy his Superman cred.
No, but my point is it being because the fact that they bought that for me before the movie came out because that's how much I love Superman. So it's like it being Superman got kids interested, at least me. And then you get there and you're like, what is this, man? What, like, this film is so depressing and boring in so many aspects. And you can tell a sad Superman story. Like Cliff just said, Death of Superman, like the highest selling comic book of all time, right? You can do that. But the payoff doesn't work because this is not the same actor. It's retconning 2 of the movies, and it came out at least 20 years too late. So yeah, it's a series that's out of time. The safest way to travel, Brandon, you have down here in the show notes. I'd argue that all of that, like if you actually think logically, this wasn't even a safe bet because there's no way on paper this actually works. Like I can see the concept of a sequel to the Reeves movies can make sense, but like this does not work.
True, and it's crazy. Like the things they should have been riskier on are the things that they made mistakes on. Like the casting was bad, and like there's certain things that they tried to capture the magic of Superman, and again they just surround him with not the right. So this just was a misstep, and it was sad because it put our character in a freezer for another 8 years, because it took another 8 years before we saw another Superman.
Yeah. This film, again, just kind of aided our generation's thoughts of Superman being boring. And I think that predominantly comes from this movie, where it's like, I was bored when I watched Superman when I was 6, and then Batman came out like the year before, and Spider-Man had a whole trilogy of movies. And that's why so many people are like, oh, Spider-Man and Batman are awesome, but Superman sucks because of this pocket of time. And it's unfortunate. It also is why we overcorrect in the next film.
It was kind of crazy that this movie also kind of sits on nostalgia real quick. And when you look at like the Flintstones and like the Scooby-Doo movies that also came out from the early 2000s, it was just trying to like bank on nostalgia, but like it wasn't as successful as these other movies. So, but yeah. On to Mr. Cavill.
You know how I kind of mentioned in the original, when we talked about the Reeve Superman, I kind of talked about how it's the perfect Superman, but like everything around him is not maybe the best representation of his world to a degree, where Mike properly corrected me. But I talked about how the point of that comment was that I missed the comic bookiness of Superman, like the things that I loved and enjoyed from the comics, the comic book spectacle, fantastical elements, the comic book characters that bring his world to life. You have Lois, Margot Kidder, and you have Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor. They bring that character to life. The supporting cast is very important. So when you go to Man of Steel, Snyder accepted that he was making a Superman movie, and he accepted that he was bringing a comic book character to life. He just didn't get Superman. And that is the crazy thing, because when you watch Man of Steel, you get the science fiction heavy Krypton, which, by the way, I'm going to say this, And it's funny because Mike, you've said it when we talked about Man of Steel on the Shatter After, and many people have said it. It's like this movie is like a rehash of the same Superman the movie, like pretty much the same film to a degree in the way that it's divided in acts. But this is so comic book heavy Krypton, and I love it. I love the lore and the poetry of Krypton that's kind of like a modernized version of everything with Marlon Brando. But I love how it feels comic booky. So Man of Steel feels comic booky. The spectacle is like, wow, we never imagined to see Superman this way. Which, by the way, Superman Returns got the spectacle right. We do have to give it that.
The plane catch, perfection.
And even a lot of people hate the whole thing of him lifting the continent. That is Superman giving off all that he can, because lifting up the kryptonite made like infused, like he's killing himself trying to get that and save people. Like that's pure Superman. That is Superman's spectacle. Dental criminal, you didn't do it first. I'm sorry. But the carelessness to the character's identity and essence is where Man of Steel fails, because you don't see Superman in Henry Cavill. You don't see the fun. You don't see the human behind the character, which I think it's what's most important, because it is, for me, Henry Cavill's Man of Steel is the perfect example of not understanding the dichotomy within the character. And it's the fact that it's never that Superman dresses up as Clark Kent, but it's always that Clark Kent chooses to be Superman. Clark Kent always comes first. The human within the Superman is what always comes first. And this particular film, this version of Superman, you lose the human side of it. And it becomes all about the God complex and how he stands above humanity. And that's where you lose the magic of the character. And I think it's where we failed in this film. And this version of Superman. And yes, you can kind of see that Snyder was starting to understand it when he brings it back in Zack Snyder's Justice League, when he brings the color back and he brings the joy back, even though the quips are bad. Like you can kind of see that he's starting to get somewhere, but then also when you kind of understand that he's still going into a nightmare world where he's going to be evil anyway, okay, you're still going to crash and burn at the end. But we never got the character. And it's funny after seeing Christopher Reeve and seeing the character, and after seeing the fact that we understood the character so much that we tried to replicate it in Brandon Routh's version, now we have this version of Superman where we miss the qualities that make him the hero that we all hope for. I think that's what hurts me the most of this version.
This is like arguably my most conflicted comic book movie in my life, honestly.
You are not lying.
Because like I love Man of Steel. I rooted for this movie when it first came out. You know, like I will always say I was that little nerd in college typing at his computer, constantly defending Superman and, you know, the Collider, John Campea videos, you know, Destruction in Man of Steel versus Destruction in Avengers, blah, 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 blah. Like, that was my dumb life and whatnot. But it's a movie where I can see potential. And, like, I love everything about it. You know, I love that Clark is truly struggling with what is my purpose? You know,
potential out of 10.
Yeah.
Ew.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's interesting because, again, we see a version of Superman prior to this who, you know, again, I mentioned he's walking in his purpose and all that stuff, whereas this is a Superman who is unsure. And again, we've all had the conversations. If y'all wants to have a conversation about DCEU, specifically the Snyder trilogy, we don't have to do the whole franchise. I don't want to talk about Aquaman 2 ever again and whatnot. But
Ocean Man.
Oh man, but yeah, it's like I can see the potential. I love the aspects of it because I do appreciate that Clark struggles. Like, hey, what am I doing? I actually am conflicted with this. I'm a powerful being, but I don't know how to use this power. And it's great. It just never actually gets to the point where he seems to have figured it out. And I get it. We were doing like chapters in this in terms of part one, BVS part two, Justice League part three, where it comes to a full um, delivery on what the character is supposed to be and all that. It's one of those movies where like I've talked about it so much that I don't know if I want to suffer through talking about it again, because it has all the trappings of a really great movie. Really great action movie. Love the comic
Yeah,
book aspects of it. Love Zod. Love the final fight. Love First Flight for Superman as well. It's just character beats that just
that
make me
first
so
flight is
angry.
pure cinema.
It's cinema. Like
See,
it's
it is
literally
the
perfect.
only moment in the whole
You'll believe a man
film.
can fly.
Not only that you see the fun, like you see him when you see him smiling, going through the savannah. You're like, that is the most Superman beautiful moment you'll ever see in your life. And
Oh
and with
yeah.
Snyder's gift for cinematography and for creating those shots, bro,
hmm And
breathtaking.
and it's funny when you think about it because this is a Superman who gets most of his like most fantastical powers in his early 30s. Like he's like a late bloomer as well in his world when you really
Yeah,
think about it. And I think it would have worked
because
in context
most
like
versions are Superboy, right?
yeah, Superboy, or he goes off um, when he's 18 and kind of travels the world, which he does in this. But it just feels like we are behind the ball. And if this movie had came out maybe in 2006 instead, we might have had a different feeling. Especially next to Nolan's Batman, where we're kind of recontextualizing these characters in an era where we're doing, origin stories essentially. And some movies got
Fair point.
sequels. It might
Fair
have
point.
worked, but
Yeah.
it it's stamped in a moment of time where it's just like by this point, I don't know if anybody outside of like us and nerds really cared about a new Superman to some degree. Obviously, I can be very wrong. If y'all disagree, please tell me.
Brandon, we talked about this movie for 2 hours, like 2 years ago.
We did. We did.
So I'm going
You
to
said
try and
you said bad no.
I did. I'm going to try and condense this as much as I can in like
Do
a
it.
60-second burst.
And
First
by
off,
that he's saying he's gonna put it in the link below his rant.
Cliff's not wrong. This movie is out of time, just like Superman Returns, because the pitch for this film, and this is why Christopher Nolan vouched for Zack Snyder to make this movie. It's echoing Batman Begins. What if Superman existed in the real world? The problem is this movie comes out in 2013, I believe, and nobody wants to be in the real world. We want the Avengers. We want to go into DC
Ouch.
Comics.
Ouch.
Yeah, like we want to go into DC Comics, and this is coming off the heels of The Dark Knight Rises, and it's just an echo of an era nobody wants to be in anymore. We're past the X-Men trilogy, we're past the Nolan trilogy, and this is why the Amazing Spider-Man and Man of Steel probably suffered the most because they were behind the curve a little bit, where it's like
Interesting.
Marvel introduced an era of comic bookiness with Thor and Captain America and Iron Man a little bit, but Iron Man was still very much just like pure sci-fi. Like, hey, this is a dude, he built a suit, we're gonna go fight another guy. But then the Avengers
Did it in
happens.
a cave with a box of scraps.
I'm not Tony Stark. That's essentially what DC was saying when they made this movie.
But it also
But
feels weird though.
Touche,
I'm
sir.
sorry. Like,
Touche.
go. No.
both those movies, like Amazing Spider-Man and Man of Steel, they also feel like a reflection of post 9/11 to some degree. Again, it's just way too late of an era, I'd say,
Yeah.
to kind of tackle those kinds of stories.
And to kind of connect with what Mike was saying, and going over to Cliff too, is like David S. Goyer, I believe, was the pen the script, right, for Man of Steel, I
Yeah.
believe.
Yep.
This is the first film though that, in spite of its shortcomings, was actually doing the work of looking into the literature of comic books. And actually, this is actually a very comic book heavy Superman movie, because him traveling the world, that screams birthright, and it screams birthright on the comic books. The entire set piece with the terraformer comes directly from Superman Earth One, which is a great trilogy of books which I strongly recommend everyone to read. And I think the biggest problem with this film is this film has a Superman crisis. We have a Superman that questions his purpose more than he lives a desire to do the right thing. He limits himself due to what's going on in his life, as opposed to just understanding that the right thing has the most impetus and power. And that's really what makes the character the character. Go, Mike.
Yeah, this is a movie that I could never get into. It has great set pieces. It has great actors. I mean, I love it. I love Amy Adams. Just in general, but also in this movie. I love Amy Adams.
Thanks for the clarification. Nate is somewhere making a rating.
Oh, Nate already said when this next movie comes out, we are ranking the Lois Lanes by hot.
I don't know why. It's not a list. I hate to be a thirst trap person, but like, it's not a list. Rachel Brosnahan is number one. Like, why is Nate even wasting his time here? Mrs. Maisel is number one no matter what.
Stop it. Especially in that trailer.
One.
Fire.
No, but they're fantastic.
It's like a list of one.
The cast is incredible in this film, and it's just, I think the more I think about this movie, the more I realize Zack Snyder doesn't understand how important the Kents are, because all of this stems from Clark's upbringing, right? Because when Pa is constantly questioning, like letting his classmates drown, right? And like saying maybe, and I get the ambiguity of he doesn't know how to respond to his kid being able to lift a school bus and what that can mean for the family. Like, I totally understand all of that. I get it. But that's also why Clark questions himself. And that does have repercussions in the person that Clark grows up to be. He's very much influenced by his father.
I never saw that so clearly until you said it just now. This movie has a Kent problem, because instead of driving him towards the right thing to do, it's driving him to question himself, because his first impetus is to do the right thing. So It's completely counterproductive to the nurturing of the character. Mike, you just broke this movie for me.
They're the main problem.
That I've always struggled to put into words why this movie never worked for me.
And that's why we need to do this one, so you can finally do it.
And that's why the Kent stuff always pissed me off so much. That's why I always joke about him being killed by a tornado. Why would you let that happen? Why would, like, the idea is Superman saves people no matter what, right? Even if it is a risk to his identity being like given out, he's gonna save somebody. And the fact that we go to the lengths to show he won't even save his father, shows how far we're going to make sure he never gets to that place to become Superman. Right? Like, I hate to be the guy. We're gonna bring My Hero Academia into this, right? What is Deku's core philosophy? Giving help when it's not asked is the essence of being a hero.
Yep.
Right?
Sometimes my body just moves.
Right, your body just moves without thinking.
Yeah.
But in this interpretation, Clark is always thinking. And Zack Snyder ended up ripping his agency away to the point where he has to have a Daredevil-like confessional of like, Father, what do I do? And he's like, bitch, go be Superman. And then the third act of the movie happens.
And so it's funny, but now it kind of links. Now I can't stop but link all the things together. Like, that's why he doesn't care about the destruction. That's why he doesn't care about the tanker that destroys the entire parking garage, because, he is not a Superman that saves people.
Right, like at like 12 years old, his dad is like,
damn it, Mike,
all your friends die. And it's like,
you just broke this film.
That's the conditioning that this character has. And it's interesting because usually the philosophy for Superman is the Kents raised him into the man he becomes, right? And he becomes like this larger than life version of who his parents raised. And this is, I don't know if Zack Snyder meant this, but this film is basically breaking that hold that his parents put him through. And he's basically has to go against what they taught him and embrace this new side of himself, which is something that people have to go through therapy. So like I kind of like there's something in here where it's like, your parents kind of fucked up, but you got to learn.
So
Jor-El,
so the fake Jor-El is kind of the one giving him the therapy.
Yeah, and so
you're supposed to like, be better and like do these things.
Right. You thought your powers were a burden, but guess what, son? You could give the people of Earth an ideal to strive towards. And that there's something there. And I think that's why this movie's so frustrating. Is he was onto something. There's something in here. It's not Superman, but there's something really interesting in here that we just couldn't fully develop. And I think we get to, because we're talking about the character as a whole, right? We get to Batman versus Superman, and he's still questioning himself. And I think that's where the problem is. If Man of Steel was the breakthrough, right? And Clark becomes Superman, the Man of Steel, and then we continue down that path, I think we're still making Zack Snyder, Henry Cavill movies today. But we regress the character a little bit even more, and we had Batman basically show up and be like, what you did was bad, punch. And that was the end of it.
When I tell you parental figures in this franchise make me so angry, because Mike had mentioned it, like, look at all the movies where he had moments of where his powers manifested, and then where he had moments of suppression, essentially. We keep talking about the bus scene when he's about to fight his childhood bully. Clark wants to fight back, but he can't because he can cause damage. And then go for it.
Not to completely cut you off, but this continues in BVS where Clark again is questioning himself, and Martha is just like, "You don't owe this world a thing you never did."
Oh,
and it's like,
yes, he
does.
Yes, that's the thing. Because in Man of Steel, remember the scene when Clark gets super hearing for the first time? Like she tells him, so like turn it off. Like you hear all this stuff, so suppress it essentially. Like don't focus on that. Instead of helping, like, okay, what do you hear? What does it sound like? All right, like in the moment it works when you're parenting, but the lasting effects of that can actually be a lot more damaging for a kid. And I get it. They don't know how to raise a kid of this magnitude. It's perfectly fine. And like I get what was working there, but we never actually see a full finalized product because the Kents, they dip after the first movie. Like Pa Kent dies. It's just Ma Kent after this.
They just dip.
They do.
Yeah, because even Martha. Don't forget her name is Martha. That's important. Her name is Martha.
Nobody care. It's Ma Kent. Okay. we ain't doing Martha out here. But even with Jor-El, like Jor-El put pressure on him as well. Telling him like, oh, he's going to give the Earthlings a perspective or a truth to strive towards. Like that's putting a lot of pressure on a kid who doesn't even know what his life is about to involve.
But that's my point of we took away Clark's agency. This is when again going back to when people say Superman is boring. This is one of the things I point to of like he makes no decision. He's just doing what the movie demands he do. Oh, Dad said to not use my powers. He doesn't. Oh, Space Dad says to use my powers.
Put on his costume. Go fly.
There's never a moment where Superman makes his own decision. Like you have to choose to be a hero at some point, right? And that's again, body moves without thinking. You have to choose to become the hero you want to be, and that's ultimately why this doesn't get the character right. It completely doesn't understand that Superman is a man of tomorrow. It's all lip service where like the movie's telling us how important Clark is or how great he'll become, but we never see it. And it's unfortunate because none of that's Henry Cavill's fault. And every time he speaks, he talks about the version of the character he would have liked to portray as the movies went on. But that's just not where Zack Snyder wanted to go. And then DC meddling and other stuff happened. So,
and this is the closest I get to New Gods. It's crazy. I just had to put that out there.
You got Steppenwolf twice somehow, so there's that.
And they both look horrible. So this movie did also have something right though. It's because when you go back to that bus scene, he is moving without thinking. He doesn't think. He saves the kids. Like it's in him. And that's one of the things that I love, especially about Elseworld stories of Superman, is that even if there's a nurture aspect to the character, like in Red Sun and stuff like that, even there is an innate desire to do the right thing and save people. It's there. He has a desire to help always. The nurturing kind of directs it to a particular area, space, but it's in him to help people. And I find it crazy that I never thought about it like the way you clarified it, Mike, that the nurturing portion and mitigating or diminishing the importance of the proper nurture that this character does get in his growth.
One thing I always loved about Superman the movie, and this is something that Superman the movie gets right, is that Clark learns with great power there must also come great responsibility, right? With the death of Pa Kent. And that's why that death hits so much harder, because with all of his abilities, with all of his power,
He couldn't.
Superman can't stop cancer. And so the lesson he takes from that is, I'm going to help out however I can. I can save people with my powers. I couldn't save my dad, though, so I'm going to help those in need, right? And that's the lesson he kind of takes away. Whereas this movie uses Pa Kent's death as a way to, again, shock Superman and keep him in that like permanent state and keep him in that shell of his, because, well, now I can't use my powers, because that's the one thing that was my dad's dying wish, was to not use my powers and to not be myself. And that's why that scene doesn't work. We can make fun of him reaching his hand out and like getting swept up in a tornado over a dog, but the reason that scene doesn't work, if we're gonna be closeted and like let somebody die, we let the dog die. You save your dad. I'm sorry. Don't go into the tornado for the dog. As somebody who owns 2 dogs, if this is where we're gonna go, Crypto wouldn't need to be saved in the tornado.
He would have broken that car door.
Right, he would have stopped the tornado. He would be like, "Oh, this is fun," and ran the other way like the Flash. But no, that's why Pa Kent's death doesn't work, because there's no reason for it to happen, and Clark can't go against his dad's dying wish of don't use your powers, don't reveal yourself to the world. That's why he needs the push in the 3rd act to finally save humanity. And in a bubble, that works in a standalone movie. That doesn't work in a Superman movie.
In a franchise where every other parental figure for these superheroes have kind of treated them the same way, where they somewhat ostracized, or like the characters become like loners and outcasts, so they themselves also aren't sure of what to do with their own powers. Wonder Woman probably being the closest to having some understanding.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's safe to say that when it comes to the construction of part of the Superman world, of the comic book lore and spectacle, Man of Steel is a plus. But in things that come to the essence of the character and the supporting cast, it fails dramatically, which is why this movie is also a misstep in the proper representation of the character. Still, the high point is Superman the movie and Superman 2. And it just goes down and down and down. And it's a new day, though. James Gunn has been telling us for the last couple of months, he's been telling us to look up. And there's change coming. A new Superman film is coming out in just a couple of weeks. And I'm very excited because this story trailer tells us so much of the identity of the film and of the identity of the character that they're moving to represent and portray. That has me very excited as a Superman fan. What stands out the most to me of the trailer, he starts as Superman because you see the switch, right? When he goes Miss Lane, right? But then he kind of slowly reverts into Clark, because that burst of emotions, he wouldn't react like that in front of people as Superman. So it's kind of highlighting the man behind the suit. And when he says,
I wasn't representing anybody except for me and doing good.
I would question myself in the same situation and consider the consequences.
People were going to die.
To me, that is the thesis, the perfect thesis for Clark Kent Superman, is that he's going to do the right thing. No matter what anybody says, if he understands what the right thing is, he is going to do what's required to do the right thing for the good of all. And that is just, what a great way to just present the character.
I broke my trailer rule. I was only supposed to ever watch one teaser trailer, and then the Discord chat kind of bullied me. I'm glad y'all did.
Peer pressure wins once again.
Yeah, hey, sometimes. No, I was about to say sometimes bullying is good. Let me not promote that on here, people. But yeah,
that is not the message.
I'll do it. Bullying works, everybody.
Stop it.
The model of
I'll be Kachan today. It's okay. Yeah, totally. Damn nerds.
But man, that first scene, I'm just like, you've established Lois Lane and Clark Kent perfectly. I'm just
center
just
stage,
the conversation. Exactly. It's just like at the core, that's what these movies, where I think they work the best, is when these two are just at peak, characterization. Again, this is just a trailer. We still have to wait for the whole movie, but based on what you're selling me here, I'm in for it. I think this is the most personality we've seen for Clark Kent. I'd say even including Christopher Reeves, because I don't think Reeves has shown this much emotion and this much physical. I mean, his movements is very subtle and whatnot in those original movies. But this, I feel like, oh no, we're using the full body. Clark isn't stoic. Clark isn't, nerdy in every aspect, but it's just like, no,
he's a farm boy.
Physical acting. Yeah, exactly. He has a personality, for lack of a better way of saying it.
Guy. He's an actual guy,
dude.
And that's something we haven't done before, which is so weird.
Like, this Clark look like he eats cheesesteaks. Like it look like he eats shrimp rolls. That's how I feel, essentially.
Beef bourguignon, but yes.
Maybe.
See, Barry is fancy.
This is a very deep cut. That's Superman's favorite food, by the way.
Is a very
no. Barry is fancy. Like Barry will run to Italy and bring pizza within 10 minutes because that's the best pizza. Like Clark just wants to get the funnel cakes that he grew up with from Smallville. You know what I mean? He's that guy.
Just a ballpark hot dog at the end of the day.
Come on, bro.
But yeah, it works for me. We haven't even gotten to all the comic book elements and this existing in a world where now we can bounce off of other heroes
comic book
even more
themes so heavy, bro.
Yes. And
yes.
Anytime a character gets a pet, I feel like it's a plus because it adds a little dynamic, to the character. Like you give them a dog,
cat,
a monkey, whatever, a companion of some sort. I'm just like, because I want a dog. I want to adopt a dog. I want a little buddy that that completes me as well. But yeah, I'm excited. It feels like we're doing something meaningful here, which I feel like a lot of comic book films forget. Is like there's a purpose we're telling the story outside of business. And
it's fun. It's theme, and this is a heavy, this is like the story trailer, and thematically it's heavy. Like this is not like light reading. It's a thematically heavy trailer. And the story appears that it's going to be heavy. There's going to be a lot of interesting conversations occurring in this film. But the interesting thing about it is it still feels like a fun ride, apart from all the topics that we're probably going to be tackling. When you first saw it, Mike, what were the things that stood out to you?
This is the Superman I grew up with. This is the Tim Daly, Bruce Timm, Justice League, Superman the Animated Series Superman, right? He's the one thing that I always loved about how Dwayne McDuffie and everyone wrote Superman and Justice League Unlimited and Superman the Animated Series, right? They remembered that Clark was a person. And that is something that I think none of the films really grasp, and something that Zack Snyder very much didn't grasp, where it's like Clark's a dude. And that's what we were just saying, right? Like the fact that he's sitting there thinking he's prepared to be interviewed by his Pulitzer Prize winning girlfriend. It's again, remember how it was early in this video I was saying Christopher Reeve never made a mistake? Boy made a mistake thinking he was always going to take it easy on him.
Nope.
Yes, we see Superman in that moment. We see him turn to Superman instantly, where he leans in to talk to her, and immediately he breaks because of Lois Lane. And that shows two things. That shows how great Lois Lane is and how great Richard Brosnan is going to be in this role.
Lois can break Superman.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
She can cut through Superman's nonsense, right? But it also shows David Corenswet and the heart that this Clark Kent has, and this heart for people he has, right? Because she's not changing his mind. He's more pissed off at the idea that somebody dare suggest he not save people, which is the exact thing I wanted from Man of Steel, where it's like, you want me to let them die? Are you crazy? That's why he's fired up and he's pissed off about it, because this is a Clark that Cliff was saying this entire time, right? This is a Clark that he knows who he wants to be. He knows the person he is. He's walking in that, and he can't believe the world is pushing back against him, right? And the best Superman stories are the ones that kind of embrace that. The comics, the movies, the animated movies, where it's like he's in a world that's telling him he shouldn't do the right thing, but he's going to do it anyway. Because again, meddling when you don't need to is the essence of being a hero. And that's something that this character embodies. And seeing this for the first time, I think I did a trailer reaction for this, and I may have not shown it initially, but it's like, that's the character that I fell in love with. And we see
So
Lex,
powerful.
and we see the Justice League International, and we see him fight a kaiju. We see, just seeing him with Jimmy Olsen, just like geeking out about whatever, brought so much joy, because no film has ever touched on Superman's friendship with Jimmy Olsen. One film had him get shot in like the first 5 seconds.
Stop
And
it.
the other one's he's just like the paper boy who's just like there for in the background, like, oh, hey, Lois, hey, Clark, and he's never seen really again. And it's like, James Gunn remembered why this character resonates, because he's a guy who wants to do good. And I think people overcomplicate the formula, right? The thing about Superman that works is he is just a guy who wants to do the right thing. He was raised to do the right thing by his parents, and he's trying to be a good person. He doesn't need some outlying force or destiny to make him do it, right? He doesn't have the regrets of Spider-Man. Right? Spider-Man only becomes a hero because of Uncle Ben's death. And that's not a knock on Peter Parker as a character, but like, he had to be forced into it. Batman becomes vengeance because of his parents' death. Superman becomes a hero because it's the right thing to do, and he wants to help people. And there's something powerful in that, and it's interesting how so many people are like against that idea and tried to change that about him. And James Gunn is like, nah, man, he wants to do good. Don't we all want to do good?
Talking back to him being just a guy, that's why I think that the inclusion of crypto is such a touch of genius, because there's no more powerful a trait of a man that when he cannot keep his dog in check. Like, it's such a human thing. Like, and also contrasting to what we had in the past, where we were creating Superman to be this godlike figure that was always afar, that we needed to follow. In the Henry Cavill presentation of Superman, a god has
You
worshippers.
had a dog, by the way.
But wasn't exploited in this sense, right?
Pa died for that dog. I can't believe we didn't make a bigger deal, but like, that dog should have been in every movie after that, you know?
Right. So, but a god has worshippers, but a man has his best friend. Like, he has his dog. Like, it was another way of bringing his humanity to the front, which I love that it does it in a way that makes sense, that doesn't feel forced. Every single shot that we see, it's just highlighting the best parts of the character, apart from now finally surrounding him in a world that feels lived in, and that it is the world that he would belong to. Hawkgirl, Mr. Terrific, Green Lantern, Guy Gardner. Who would have thought that Guy Gardner would be the first Green Lantern that we would see? And I hate looking at him, just like I don't really like Guy Gardner.
Ooh, I want to punch him in the face every time he pops up.
Yes.
I'm like, you got
It's
it
like,
right, but
yeah.
I hate this man so
Yes.
much.
Yes.
Just context of the world we're existing in now. Like, we've seen every evil Superman. We've seen every comic book film that is tackled. God knows what. You know, we've seen it all. And now it's just like, oh, great. Which is funny, because it seems like we're embracing all these aspects of prior Superman that so many of us didn't like. But now we're embracing it because we've seen how many times this thing can go bad, that now we're just like, yes, give me, I don't want to say the pinnacle of Clark Kent, but like, give me a piece of what we of what can be and what should be, arguably.
Yeah, Superman is such an interesting character to me because he's one that you don't learn to appreciate until you get older, right? It's fascinating because every little boy wants to be Superman.
Very interesting point.
You hit like 7 years old, right? Like that happened to me. Like the older I got, I stopped caring about this character, and my favorite superhero was Wolverine. And my favorite superhero was Batman, right? My favorite Ninja Turtle was Raphael. You become an edgelord a little bit, right? but then the older you get, you're like, oh, I actually prefer Nightwing. Oh, I actually prefer Leonardo. I actually prefer Superman. I actually respect Cyclops more than Logan at some points, right? It's like to understand the Boy Scout archetype, I don't think you appreciate it until you get older. And so everybody who was clamoring for Man of Steel has matured by 12 years. And they're like, you know what? I need that hope. I need that optimism because everyday life is already so bleak. I need to be reminded that there's good in the world. Give the people of Earth an ideal to strive towards, right? And so that newfound appreciation
Cliff, he's
for this
preaching.
character.
He's just preaching, bro.
People are falling in love with this character again, and we see that already. And I can't believe James Gunn, before the movie's even come out, this movie might suck. We don't know. But before this movie came out, he already won people back on Superman.
Yes.
And that is an incredible feat. Like, he has trunks on, and people argued about it for a day. Nobody is saying no to the trunks anymore. Because we all have just embraced Superman in all his glory.
Yes.
And I love that because, again, one thing, and we've talked about this throughout the entire show, believing a man can fly in the first film, right? And then echoing back to that, and then trying something completely different with Man of Steel. Every Superman story thus far has been putting Superman in our world. But now we're finally going into his world.
Yes.
And that's what makes this so interesting and exciting. And it could blow up, right? Because a lot of the fear is there's too many characters in this movie. But seeing a Superman where the Justice League can just randomly just show up willy-nilly is something we've just never done before. Because, like, if there's a kaiju, of course the Green Lantern would show up. So, of course, Guy Gardner is here. He doesn't have to be in the whole movie. It can still be a Superman story, but you do run the risk of maybe it's oversaturated. But I'm willing to try. We've tried everything else. We've done Evil Superman. We've done Dark Superman. We've done Omni-Man. We've done Homelander. Let's do comic book Superman for once and give it a go, and let's see what happens.
You know, I mentioned Richard Donner's movie prior to this was, The Omen. Here we are now, another director who arguably I don't think any of us thought was ever going to direct a Superman movie. We've seen him. I personally think The Suicide Squad is his best movie. That's just makes a 5-star film for me. It's drastically different.
Good.
Yeah, it's drastically different from a lot of other stuff.
Starro,
so,
the Conqueror.
Like this man has a pretty decent batting average so far. So it can work.
It's interesting because you're right that Gunn's filmography is something we don't look into because what does his movies tend to focus on? Families. The complete opposite of Man of Steel,
small creatures
right?
that we all fall in love with.
And small creatures that we fall in love with. So yeah, we have the dog covered, but in this trailer we have the Kents. In this trailer we have the Kents.
Yes.
And they're already completely different than the last iteration of the Kents we had, right? They're both very supportive of him being Superman. Like his dad is like, hey, believe in yourself, do the right thing. And his mom's like, oh great, there's a kaiju here, I'll get your boots. And it's like, that's why he's the way he is. That's why he spazzes out at Lois. He's like, I'm just trying to do good. I'm trying to do the right thing. Because this trailer already planted the seeds of that's how they raised him.
You're right. I almost forgot. Because what was the first sign of anything about this universe that we ever got? Do y'all remember?
The first...
Enlighten us.
It was a very specific picture with him putting on his work boots and there's a giant purple orb behind him. It's just, It feels like an everyday thing. It's like, oh, well.
Yes.
Disaster. I do what I gotta do best. I need to clock
that
in,
is a very good. That okay.
Gotta go to work.
Well done. Well done. I like that. Yes. What I like about the trailer the most, though, also just to finish and going off what you were saying. Yes, on one side you can say it's oversaturated, but I love how centered on Superman this trailer is. Like only people that follow comic books know that, oh my God, there's a lot of characters here. You know what I mean? But regular moviegoers that don't read comic books like us, all they see is Superman. All they know that this is a Superman movie. And that is very exciting. Because everything else is noise, and all I'm here is for that. It's all about the shield, bro.
I'm just so mad that we have to show up next week and review a different Superman movie. I want to review this movie. I want to keep talking about this one.
Yes.
I want to see this movie now.
Yes.
And again, no disrespect to Superman versus the Elite. Fantastic movie. We're going to have a great time. If you guys haven't seen it yet, go watch it before
Do it now.
It comes out.
It's so good.
Go watch that movie.
Yes.
I just want to see this
Yes.
one. This is what's pissing me off. I want to see this one today. And
another 2 or 3 weeks, bro.
We're a month out.
Another 2 or 3 weeks, and we're there, man. We're there. There's like a Japanese trailer online where you kind of get a bit more Lois and Clark scenes. See, now we're at that stage. We're scouring all the different trailers in different languages to try and just get more footage.
I'm excited though because no DC movie has made me feel this way. Probably ever. Like maybe Batman versus Superman.
Done.
Because it was Batman versus Superman. But ever since I got burned by that movie, nothing has got me excited. But I'm excited for Superman and DC again.
I haven't felt this way for any comic book movie in decades. Like it's
multiple. Holy crap!
Like,
not a single Avenger.
I'm including the maybe Infinity War, but I feel like that's different because I've had 10 years of built up relationships. Whereas I'm just about a solo movie where I'm like, oh,
yes,
I need to see this. Like I need to buy multiple tickets. Like I'm going to be broke when this movie comes out.
It's been a long time since I've made it a point to see a movie more than once in theaters. Like the last time that I did something stupid, like I watched Avengers Endgame 5 times opening weekend. Like that was, because I was all in and I truly loved it.
That's a 3-hour movie.
Oh, and I loved it every single time.
Did you see this on like Prime ticket hours, or did you at least do like?
No, I watched it opening. I watched it opening night.
Paid the full like $12, $13.
I flew to New York to watch once with Mario. Like it was a thing. Like, but I love that movie so much, and like I love Endgame, and I can watch it over and over again. I don't care. But I think I'm with you, Cliff. This is the first time in a long time that I'm excited for a character-driven movie like this. Like, I haven't been excited for any of the Marvel movies post Endgame. I was day one. I watched Dark Knight Rises multiple times in theaters as well, and I love that film. Don't care what anybody says. I think it's a very good conclusion to that version.
Really adopted the darkness.
I love the Dark Knight Rises, but yeah, I think this is the first time in a long time that I can go like. I think the last one that I can say that I was very excited that it was like a solo. It was Logan. Is the last one that I was really like, wow, I need to go watch this film. You know what I mean?
If we're going solos, it'd probably be Black Panther for sure.
Fair.
But yeah.
Fair. Yeah. But yeah, I think I'm excited and I'm glad that it's Superman. Because I can't get the Flash right. So hopefully this will give me hope that one day we'll get a great, proper Flash movie.
This feels like a universe where all of our favorite characters could pop up. Just saying, it feels like
yes.
hopeful.
Yes. Like I want to see the Wonder Woman in this in the universe. Like, and I think that's actually so crazy. Like I talked to Mike. Okay, the podcast is kind of over, and I'm gonna close it in a second. But I think this is very important. I talked to Mike. You said something so powerful that I didn't understand what my issue was. For people that have seen the Peacemaker trailer, there's an appearance by the Justice League, whatever those characters like Hawkman, Maxwell Lord, they're there. I didn't like them being there. But in this trailer, in this world for Superman, I want to see all the characters that they see in that world. Like, how powerful is it? Especially if this movie is phenomenal. I'm going to be looking forward to seeing more characters appear in this version of the DC universe.
Like,
and I never thought about it that way. You broke my mind, Cliff. I'm excited.
I just have to say, I need all y'all to go watch this movie so I can get all my stuff because there's a Titans movie on the way. So I already got everything I want. I'm good. I'm Gucci. We can do whatever.
You got
a Batman movie.
See, but the question is, do you think we get the Nightwing origin proper?
No.
Like with no, as in Clark having the conversation and giving. We need. See, I still want it. Like I want a little bit of that.
I want Dick as Robin, but Damien's already going to be here.
I want a world's
been here for like 7 years already.
It's not happening.
No, but there has to be. No, I think James Gunn actually said in interviews that before Justice League we would get a world's finest.
I gotta see it first to believe it. That's post credit. That's post show combo. Look, the moment I see Mr. Miracle, then I can die in peace. I'll put it that way. The moment I see a new guy,
yeah, Mr. Miracle, bro, we need Big Barda. We need it. We need Big Barda. That's just saying. We just need Big Barda because that's really what you're saying. You don't want to see Mr. Miracle. The only reason you want to see the New Gods is because you need Big Barda.
I want Scott Free, Barda, Lashina, Orion, Calabac, Mad Harry. I want
Ava DuVernay. Where you at? Ava, where you at? I am so excited for everything happening in the world of Superman. So, next up, next week, talking about Superman on July 14th. We're still debating whether or not it will be a stream or not. I think it's going to be a stream. Hey, man, it'll be great. Mr. Mario Francisco Robles from Superman on Film will be joining us for the Superman film review episode. So stay tuned to everything that we do here during the Summer of Superman and on the Shadow After. If you love what we do here, please give us your support by clicking on that like button, subscribing to our YouTube channel, and sharing with your friends so that people can learn and enjoy Superman with us this summer. Cliff, if people were to find you, where can they find you, brother?
Pretty much just here on Letterboxd. I make guest appearances on the Chatter After, from time to time. So if you like hearing what I got to say and like looking at my beautiful face and our beautiful faces, subscribe so you can get more of it, especially during this Summer of Superman, because I didn't realize I got a lot more to say now that I'm thinking about it.
Mike, what you got? Where can people find you, bro?
You guys can find me here, like Cliff. I'm pretty much just trapped here, like I'm in the Phantom Zone, like General Zod. I'm just like, guys, I'm just here in the little box on your TV or on your phone on the Chatter After. But yeah, Nava Cinephile everywhere else. Talking My Hero Academia Vigilantes with Isaac over on the Amateur Otaku. Because there's a Superman character in that show that is a piece of crap.
Yes, he is.
To get into.
Yes, he is.
But All Might's also in that show, so let's go. They even each other out.
Go beyond.
But yeah, also we're gonna talk Fantastic Four because we aren't forgetting our Marvel fans. So Fantastic Four stuff is gonna happen too. It's just not the summer of Fantastic Four. You're gonna get like a video and be happy with that.
And that's all you get.
You'll get a month of Fantastic Four from us.
And you can find me at Monkey D. Braffy at Blue Sky Social, from time to time, also at the Amateur Otaku, from time to time, also in the Shadow After, doing amazing things and talking to awesome people about awesome, great things. Guys, keep doing the right thing. Stay super. See you next time, guys. Peace.